Scripture reading today is Isaiah chapter 55, verses 8 and 9. Isaiah 55, verses 8 and 9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts.
Good morning. Whether you are a member here or if you are a guest with us, I just want to tell you personally that I am so thankful that you are here. It is such a blessing for us to be able to come together and get to worship our God together. Now, you might be looking up here, some of you, and asking, who is this guy? If that is what you are asking, that's a fair thing to ask. I am the new guy. My name is McLean, and as of about a month ago, I am the Connections and Kids Minister here at Buford. And I just want to say, wow, what a blessing this month has been for me. My wife and I, like I said, we moved here a month ago, and since we've been here, I've had so many different opportunities since day one. I've had a lot of teaching privileges or opportunities. I actually got to teach the ladies' Bible class a few weeks ago. I've got to not only be a part of the young families class, but also got to teach one Sunday. We also got to, for our first official full weekend here, we got to go and be a part of the Go and Do service day. And then the next weekend, we got to go and be a part of the neighborhood cookout. And then the next weekend, we got to come back up here and help set up for VBS. And then had 4 awesome nights with some really cool kids. And then a few days later, we actually left and went with the youth group on their mission trip this last week. And now that brings us to today, and here I am. So it has been just so much packed into 1 month. But on behalf of Caden and myself, I just want to thank you all for welcoming us and for embracing us. We feel so blessed already from honestly the very beginning. And every moment that we have experienced here has really only continued to show us that right here is exactly where we are meant to be. And coincidentally, that is what we are going to be talking about this morning as we spend our time in God's Word together. Now, while kind of reflecting on life, I wanted to come up with a way that we could really define a lot of those crucial moments that take place all throughout our life. And I was thinking of some different ways to kind of to play with that. And what I settled on were 3 very simple words that we're going to use as we kind of go through this study together. And the 3 words that I've decided that we're going to use an attribute, and we'll talk about those in a second, are these 3 here. The words are wow, now, and how. Now, as you hear all of these, I'm going to say these a lot, so probably by the end, you're going to be really tired of all of these words. However, I want us to make sure that we understand exactly what each one of these words is trying to convey whenever we use one of them. Now, we can really say, if we look at our lives, that we have probably likely experienced moments like these all throughout our lives. And I'm going to explain exactly what each one of these are. So starting off with wow. A wow moment is whenever God's power and provision or providence is very evident in our lives, where we are able to look at something that has taken place and just take a step back and just say, wow. To be able to recognize that our God is the one that is in control in that moment, in that step, in that process of our life, and we get to be receivers of that and witnesses of that. But then you also have these now moments, and now is kind of a question. Now takes place when we feel like we are ready for what's next in our life, but God has other plans. Thinking back in my own life, I can remember the time when I graduated college and I was ready to start in ministry. And I thought that I had everything lined up and was ready to start a new work. And it was not time for me to begin that. And instead, I ended up taking a job that I did for about a year that was just not what I wanted to do. But you see, it was through that job that things ended up working out where I ended up exactly where I was supposed to be all along, and I found that job. But of course, in that moment, it was very much a now. Is this when things are supposed to begin? But of course, it wasn't yet time for that. God had other plans. And then, of course, we have these how moments. And the how moments are really the big, tough, confusing things where it's really hard for us sometimes to see the power that God is displaying, where it's really hard to recognize and understand that God is in control. Most recently for Caden and I, it was about 8 months ago, we were content living in Orlando, and we had a house that we really liked. We were just renting it at the time, but we had lived there for almost 2 years. And then we receive a text message from our landlord that was just awesome to work with. And she proceeded to say, hey, we really want to move back into that house. So unfortunately, we have to end that lease. And in that moment, we're just thinking, how could this happen? How could this be what is next for us? And what are we supposed to do from here? We'll kind of return to that particular story in a little bit, but it's definitely times where you can experience, and maybe even more significant, even more painful things that you've seen in your life that kind of result in this how question, where it's so difficult for us to find that control, for us to be able to find the providence that God has set for us. And as you think of these three things, as you think about this wow and this now and how, I'm sure that you can even think about or identify these moments in your own life. If you think about the last month, maybe the last year, I'm sure there's a lot of these moments that fall into one of these three categories. If you will, turn with me to Genesis chapter 37. Genesis chapter 37. This morning, we're going to do a kind of a quick summary of one particular person in the Bible, and that is Joseph. We're going to look at the story of Joseph, and we're going to see a lot of these same kind of moments. I think there's a lot of steps that take place all throughout his life that show us these wow and now and how moments that he experiences all throughout the passages that we are going to read. Now, Joseph was, of course, one of the youngest sons of Jacob. And at the time that we pick up in our story, he's only 17 years old at the time, and he's serving as a shepherd, shepherding the flocks of his father. And we also know that he is favored above all of his other brothers. And so, of course, that doesn't put him on the best foot with the relationship that he has with his brothers. But not only does he have this favor and receive, of course, this really cool coat, but along with that, he also has these dreams. And these dreams are very prophetic. he knows that something is going to come from the dreams that he's having. And of course, he has these two different dreams, and one of those being that all of these sheaves bow down to him. And then another dream happens where the sun and moon and stars also bow to him. And what he's kind of proclaiming here is that, well, I'm going to end up in a position of power. And all of my brothers, all of my family are going to have to bow to that power. Now, when you tell brothers that already don't like you that this is kind of what's going to happen, obviously they're not going to like you even more. But up to this point, for Joseph, this is very much a wow moment. A lot of things are going really well for him, and now he believes that things are going to work out where he's going to be in command of something great. However, this is not how things work out immediately following. In fact, we see beginning in Genesis chapter 37, here is where the brothers take matters into their own hands. Beginning in verse 23, here's what it tells us. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, there was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. So Joseph now finds himself, after this event that takes place with his brothers, he now finds himself in a pit. And of course, we know that what is to follow here is that, well, some Ishmaelites are coming by, and hey, at least now we don't have to kill him. Instead, we will just sell him to these guys that are traveling through. And so that's exactly what they do. They give him over to the Ishmaelites, and the Ishmaelites then carry Joseph to Egypt. Now, this, of course, is very much a how moment. How could my brothers do this to me? Or even, how could God let something like this happen? You see, with this taking place, his identity and his family and his freedom are all taken from him as he is brought to Egypt. So now we see what happens next. We turn to Genesis chapter 39. Starting right there at the very first verse, here's what Genesis 39 tells us in this next step of the process of what Joseph is enduring. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. Now, this honestly is not the absolute worst outcome for Joseph. He actually becomes a servant to Potiphar, and we learn that Potiphar is an officer to Pharaoh. So he's actually most likely living a much better life than he could after being kind of sold and given away. And so now Joseph finds himself serving Potiphar. And not only that, we also see that the Lord is with Joseph in his servitude. And not only that, but the Lord continues to give him success in all that he does. And other people see that too. Even Potiphar is able to see the power of God that is with Joseph through all of this. And so Joseph finds himself in this new position, and now he's kind of thinking, maybe this is a now moment. Maybe this is the time where I'm no longer going to have to be a servant. Maybe I'll make my way up the ladder. Maybe this is the way that I will find this rise to power. But of course, we know that this, again, is not the result of what takes place here. This is simply not meant to be yet. And that's due to the deception of Potiphar's wife. We know that Joseph is falsely accused, and as a result of that, we see what the outcome is. If you look a few verses later, beginning in verse 19 of that same chapter, 39, it tells us, as soon as his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, "This is the way your servant treated me," his anger was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. And he was there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And so now Joseph again finds himself in a place that he does not want to be. He now finds himself in prison. But even here, the Lord is still with Joseph. And Joseph, in return, even though he continues to find himself in less than ideal situations time and time again, Joseph continues to show patience and he continues to show faith. And even as Joseph faces yet another one of these how moments, Joseph continues to follow the Lord. Even when he could easily turn this and say, well, why do these things keep happening to me? Why is God allowing this to take place? Clearly, God is not with me. Instead, he recognizes the presence of the Lord in everything that he does, whether he is with his family or sold to be a servant or put in prison. Joseph is able to remain faithful and display that patience and that faith. Now, time passes, and he continues to be in prison, but there is an opportunity that he is given to interpret a few dreams. He interprets two dreams, one from a cupbearer, one from a baker, and he lets the cupbearer know, hey, there's a really good outcome for this dream. In 3 days, you're going to be restored. And he also lets the baker know, your dream is not going to go as well as the cupbearers. And in fact, your life is going to end in 3 days. But he also asks the cupbearer, please remember the things that I have told you. And so, of course, the cupbearer is restored. The dreams that they have come to pass. But the cupbearer forgets, and about 2 more years take place. Another potential now is now when I'm going to finally escape this imprisonment. That turns into another not just yet. And so 2 years pass, and finally he is remembered and called to bring an interpretation to a dream that Pharaoh has. And he, of course, is able to do so easily because, again, the Lord is with him. And as a result of this, we then see that his action elevates him from being a prisoner to now being second in command. If we go to Genesis chapter 41, beginning in verse 38, here's kind of the outcome of what is taking place here. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. There's one more verse I want us to look at, just a few later in 46. We're just going to look at the first half of it. It tells us that Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And so finally, we have seen all of these things come around to what Joseph has been waiting for. God's plan for Joseph has finally come to fruition. You see, this is kind of that that final wow moment. This is the time where Joseph is able to see from years ago the dreams that he had are now finally falling into place. But we also recognize that it took 13 years of uncertainty before this happens. Now, after this story moves on from here, we actually see that Joseph's dreams do, in reality, come true. His brothers have to travel to Egypt, and while they're in need, they bow their faces to the ground before Joseph. But we see in order for Joseph to carry out that dream that was ahead of him, he had to first find himself in the pit. And here's the really kind of unusual thing about all of this is as we look at everything that took place in the life of Joseph, in order for him to get exactly to the point that he finds himself, we have to recognize and understand that all along there was a purpose to that pit. We have to recognize that there was a reason that Joseph was placed in all of these different situations that he found himself in. Because all along, this was a part of the purpose that he was meant to serve. These were all of the things that he was meant to endure in order for him to find himself where God placed him. Because this is exactly where he was meant to be. You see, the how and the now moments, those moments of uncertainty, those moments of doubt, the difficult times that Joseph faced in his life, those were all just as important as the wow moments. Another way we could kind of think about it, and especially in this context, is that the journey that Joseph took was just as important as the destination that he finally reached. And it's really easy for us to look at this story and to say, yeah, that makes sense. Because when we look at the life of Joseph, we are blessed in that we get to see the beginning, the middle, the end, and everything that came as a result of the life of Joseph. We are lucky in that we get that 1,000-foot view where we can see the arc of what takes place in the story of Joseph's life. And so when we look at Joseph's life, we recognize the purpose behind those moments of doubt and uncertainty and questioning and difficulty. But now we have to think about ourselves. And now we have to ask, well, what about our own lives? What about the lives that we each live today and the encounters that we have with those same moments? Now, we've been talking all morning. I told you I was going to say how and now and wow a whole lot, and I hope it wasn't too much. But we've been talking about these three concepts, and I fully recognize that all three of these things are very much a simplification of something that is a lot more complex. Because you and I both know that in reality, life is a lot more complicated than that. Our lives are not very neatly tied into these particular types of moments. I am sure that for some of us, there are questions in life that we have that are unanswered. There are difficulties that have persisted in our life much longer than we ever thought we would have to endure. There might be a whole lot of uncertainties in life among the few things that you feel pretty confident about. And the next thing that I'm going to say it because I find myself in this very situation. I find myself practicing this a whole lot. And that is, if we allow ourselves, if I allow myself, I will fight my entire life in order to try and maintain control. I will do everything in my power in order to be the one that makes the decisions in my life, in order to be the one that is, for the sake of the illustration, holding on to the steering wheel, and that is taking control of what I feel like needs to be done in my own life. I think a lot of times we feel like we are the ones that should just take matters into our own hands because that's the way things are going to get done. I've recognized that I've said that a whole lot of times in my own life. And maybe you recognize that you've said that a lot of times as well. But I want to point you to a very interesting but very true idea. And that is that our life wasn't made for things to go our way. Our life is not set up in a way where everything should turn out exactly the way that we want them to turn out. Because if we truly understand, we are imperfect people. And we are sometimes pursuing imperfect things. And we do not always get things right. We don't always do things right. And even when we have a God who wants to lead us and take care of us and do all these things for us, so frequently in our lives do we say, I think I'm going to try and take control of this. But our life was not made for things to go our way. And honestly, that's a good thing. If we turn to the book of Isaiah, in fact, the passage that was read for us earlier this morning in Isaiah chapter 55, kind of around this passage, we see a lot of discussion about a hope for something great, a hope for the lives of all of these people who feel like they are living in a time of desperation. And the Lord is making these declarations, and there's a very powerful declaration that we've read, but I want us to return to and make sure that we understand. In chapter 55 of Isaiah, beginning of verse 8, it tells us, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." See, there will be times in our life that are going to feel daunting. They're going to feel kind of scary. They're going to feel like times where we are just stepping out into the unknown. But if we are taking those steps, if we are choosing to live a life like Joseph did, with this unshakable faith in our God and who he is and the control and the power that he has in our lives, no matter what, and knowing that his ways are greater, then we have to recognize and know and take heart in the fact that he will lead us where we are meant to be. He is going to take us and lead us and allow us to be in the exact moments and the exact places that we are supposed to be, because we have that faith in him and what he has planned for our life. I want to share one more moment with you. And I don't know if this will actually show as a video or a photo. Regardless, I'm going to explain it to you. So this was about 9 months ago, back in September. And I will just be honest with you and tell you that I was in a somewhat discouraged state of mind. I felt like things were very complicated in terms of me asking all of these how and now questions. I wasn't necessarily, I wasn't unhappy, but I just knew that there were things that were supposed to be taking place in my life, and I just couldn't figure out what was next for me. And coincidentally, at the same time that I'm having a lot of these things circling in my head, I also end up going on, a crazy park challenge, if I can call it that. And I really don't have the time to fully explain it. But you can't quite tell because he's very blurry. But this is myself and Ben McGreevy. And on this particular September evening, or I guess you could say like 2 to 3 a.m., we are having a conversation. In the middle of doing this ridiculous challenge at Disney World, I won't get into the details. If you want to know the details, we'll tell you, but that's for another time. But during this discussion and during this time together, we just begin to talk about all of these things. I begin to share all of the questions that I have about where I am supposed to be. And during this, we have a conversation about a possible job opportunity. And that conversation, which just kind of stuck in the back of my mind, led me and my wife on a path that then, months later, led us right here. And I will also tell you that in these last several months, it has not been all wow moments. There are still parts of my life, there are still parts of the things that we do that we ask now. Is now the time that this is going to take place in our life? And not yet. Or how? How are we going to make all of these things work? How is all of this going to work out? And God continues to answer that question for us. These last several months, we had a lot of questioning and uncertainty and wanting to take control. And there were multiple times where I just wanted to take control. But God continued to show us time and time again that right here is where we're meant to be. And from this last month alone, as I said from the very beginning, we have recognized and been overwhelmed by the blessings that we've had here. And we really do see with confidence that this is where we are meant to be. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9, it tells us the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. Can I tell you one more kind of wild thing? 24 hours ago, this was not my sermon. 24 hours ago, I had something completely different planned. And then I woke up yesterday, and this was just on my heart. This idea of being able to see where we are meant to be and how much that has impacted my life just in getting to witness that. And as I thought about that, I also thought about each one of you. And I thought about the fact that just as I find myself exactly where I'm meant to be, you are also where you're meant to be. You are in this very moment, in this room, worshiping our God here at Buford Church of Christ. You are exactly where you are meant to be. And hopefully through the study that we've done and through the life of Joseph and through thinking about all of these moments, hopefully you are able to think about all of these things that your God has done for you and the difference that it has made in your life. Hopefully these words from our God can help you give control over to Him. You see, this is exactly where you are meant to be. Now, as we conclude our time together, I want to just kind of ask you a very very simple question. That is, are you having a difficult time realizing that you are where you're meant to be? Maybe you are experiencing a life that is filled with uncertainty, a life where you keep asking the question, why is this happening? Or even, what about now? Will this time be different? Will this time be when this is answered for me? Maybe you just need the prayer and the support of your church family. Maybe you need to discuss and go to and receive the encouragement from your shepherds. Maybe it's time that you fully commit and give your life to Christ. That you truly release that control, let go of that steering wheel, and allow Jesus to be in control. And allow him to show you exactly where you are meant to be. If there is anything that we can do for you this morning, we invite you to do so now as we stand and as we